afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this sort of session. I thought before I sort of begin, just to give you a little bit of an explanation in terms of who I am and why I'm here today. Whilst I run a sort of sales training company by day, I spend an awful lot of time, and actually somebody reminded me that in September it was 28 years running Exhibitor days. And the idea is to try and say, look, I go to a lot of shows, trade shows, consumer shows, and you can see two stands separated by no more than 2 meters of carpet, both doing roughly the same sort of thing, and one of them is really busy and one of them is really quiet. And the interesting thing is that they've both paid the same amount of money to be there. Right? So my proposition, my focus really is to say, look, what can you guys be doing to make sure that yours is the stand that's busy, that you'll go back and go, yep, actually that was a really good use of our time. Now, in terms of what I hope to try and cover with you, there's quite a lot of stuff to get through. I've got about half an hour, a bit less now, 25 minutes. So I'm going to do two things. One is to talk very quickly, and two, try and cover off the most important bits rather than it's there, so we're going to cover it. So I'm looking at things that you can do. You've heard a lot of the things already that you can do before the show happens, but certainly things that you do during the days of the event, and clearly some of the things afterwards. And if you've got any questions, we'll go from there. My logical start point would be to look at first impressions. And the idea with first impressions, I guess, is to understand that from first impressions point of view, they are probably the most important thing that you guys are going to be dealing with. Okay? In lay language, we've always heard things like you should never judge a book by the cover. The fact is that people do. And actually, there's probably nowhere more that they're going to judge you than on your exhibition stand. When they one first look at you, they're going to think, do they look like people I want to talk to or not? Yeah. Now, you think about first impressions. Think about a particular scenario, because sometimes it's much more important than others. So let's just take an example. Let's say going for a job interview. Right? You go for a job interview. How quickly, ladies and gentlemen, do you think it takes the typical interviewer to form a first impression of the candidate? Seconds. Yeah, I think you're right. As soon as you walk through the door, they form an overall picture. Too tall, too short, too fat, too ugly. Some qualify on all counts. How long is it then, do you reckon, before they decide, yes, you got the job, or no, you haven't? How long does that secondary process take? About 10 seconds, probably a little bit longer, but yeah, not long. It's about 2 or 3 minutes is what they reckon. Right? Now, clearly there could be 10 other candidates waiting to be interviewed, but what they're saying is, in principle, yes, subject to next 10, or actually, no way, even if the next 10 are rubbish, I'm not going to employ you. Now, just imagine, for the sake of argument, folks, we could find 2 candidates coming for a job interview. And let's imagine that they were, as near as we can manage it, clones of each other. So same background, same education, same work history, you name it, the same. In other words, each of these candidates, for the sake of argument here, let's just imagine they said, right, good point, bad point, good point, bad point. This person's identical, good point, bad point, good point, bad point. The only thing that distinguishes our 2 candidates in this particular example is first impression. Imagine one created a really good first impression, one created a really bad first impression. What would happen in real life is the first candidate would walk in and create a really good first impression. And the interviewer would look at her and think, hello, right? But, we're professional, we could be wrong, but we'll see, we'll check it out, right? So it starts off positively. First good point, ha, 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 you see, the moment she walked in, I knew she was good, rock and roll. Okay, fine, there's a bad bit, nobody's perfect, ha, ha, confirmation, I knew she was good the moment she walked in, it's really good. Excellent, excellent. Okay, keep an eye on that, basically go to the next step, which she does. Seconds later, candidate number 2 walks in, creates a really bad first impression. If he looks at her and thinks, she's taking the bit, however, I could be wrong. Please God, I could be wrong. Can't be able to shut. However, we're here now, we might as well go through the motions. So first good bit, I knew she couldn't be all bad. Didn't take long. You see the moment? Yeah, I knew she was, whoopee-doo, see, confirmation. I knew she was rubbish, no way, no job. Sadly, that's what happens in real life. What is sadder than sad McSad, on a sad day obviously, is that this process doesn't just restrict itself to a job interview. This happens all the time. This happens socially. You imagine you go to a party and you turn up alone and you walk into the room, there's only 2 people in the room. There's one over there, very smart, very attractive, very racy. One over there, dirty, disgusting, drunk and probably diseased, right? You walk in, you've got to go and talk to one of them. Who are you going to go and talk to? Well, unless you recognize a kindred spirit, most people walk up to the one that's quite racy, and once you get chatting, you discover the filthy old perv, and yet the drunk was really nice. But how many of us, I wonder, hand on heart, think, oh, I better go and talk to that filthy old reptile, because underneath it all, there might be a really nice person. We don't do that. Folks, when you are exhibiting, I was about to say pretend, but this might be true. I was going to say pretend that you're a really nice person, working for a really nice company, selling really nice products and services. The problem is you don't know how to behave in your exhibition stand. So when people take a look at you, they are not going to think, underneath that Gibbon-esque behavior, I bet there are some really nice people with some really nice products. They're going to give you a wide berth. So the key to remember here is people are going to judge you by how you behave. Everything from how you stand, how you look, what you wear, the messaging, the graphics, all those things will have an impact upon how people perceive you. And actually, in terms of time, folks, you haven't got long. They reckon 10 to 12 seconds is all you've got. Because on average, 10 to 12 seconds is about the average length of time it takes the average visitor to walk past the average stand. So unless your stand is very thin and long, where you've got a bit of an advantage, that's what you're playing with, all right? Now, from the visitor's point of view, we know a thing or three about them. And some of those things that we know are we know that they like some choice, because that's why they come to an event like this, because there's so many of you. The second thing is we know they find it a bit confusing, but they're expecting to, but hence we've got a plan in place to look after that. And the third thing is, bear in mind, these people have not been bribed to be here. They want to be here. They want to do business with you. Okay? So you are starting from a very high initial point. Now, often you think about your objectives in terms of what you want to try and do with these people. And when you think about objectives, people think about three main things, or should think about three things. One, what are your objectives? What do you want to try and achieve by being at the show? Number two, what about the visitor? Why do they come and what do they expect to see and or do? And then thirdly, depending upon those first two, you can then work out what your role should be. If I try and give you an example of what I mean by this, folks, let's imagine you decide at this year's event, you are going to have a major data capture exercise, right? You want to see as many people as possible, capture as many email addresses as possible. Great. And you think, we need people on our stand. What are we going to do? So you decide you're going to bribe them, right? Free booze. Fantastic. Then corporate social responsibility says, no, we can't do that, drink driving, so give them free coffee. So you think, right, okay, we're going to give them a decent cup of coffee, and that's your plan. So you build the stand, you've got a nice little barista area at the back, it looks fantastic. The doors open, and within moments, you've got a queue of people queuing outside your stand. You think, how fantastic is that? Ka-ching, right? Now look at what happens in terms of time. Imagine a visitor's in that queue for 5 minutes, and then they get to the front of the queue. A decent cup of coffee is going to take 5 minutes. Get a cup of coffee, it's too hot to drink. It's going to take 5 minutes for it to calm down. Then they drink it, it's going to take 5 minutes. And once they've drunk it, then they think, well, I can't bugger off now because that looks like I only came for the free coffee. So I'll pretend I'm interested for another 5 minutes. And suddenly one visitor has taken up 20 to 25 minutes of your time. Remember, your objective was to see as many people as possible. Therefore, corporate hospitality is probably not the right way to go. Does that make sense? Yeah? So think about what you want to achieve, but also think about your visitors and what they want to achieve by being there as well, because that's very important. And in terms of objectives, Jim covered off a few things this morning, or earlier this afternoon. But one of the things that I do is, because I haven't got life, I'm quite sad, is I go to shows, and it doesn't matter whether they're trade, consumer, whatever, and I ask people why do they exhibit, because I'm quite interested in that. I like to know why people exhibit. And I ask them a very simple question, why are you here? What follows next, folks, in true Miss World fashion, in reverse order, are the most frequent responses by frequency, okay? So in fourth position, we get that one. Now, it's my turn this year. Yeah, I couldn't come last year, but I'm here this year. In third place, I'm here because someone was sick, and I'll tie a martyr. I'm helping them out. I'm standing in here, so look at me, check it out. Good objective. In second place, more worryingly, they're here to get networked, right? And they're on company expenses, staying in a hotel overnight, no War Department, hallelujah. But the really scary thing is the top answer when I ask them this question is that, don't know, because we always come, because someone in marketing booked it out, because the competitors are here, that's why we're here. It's like, what? So, okay, maybe my question is a bit dodgy. Maybe I should have made a more specific question. In other words, what is your objective in exhibiting? Top two most frequent universal answers. In second place, I get that. I just want to get through the next few days. There's been such a disruption. And they miss the point that during the 2 or 3 days of the show, they can do more business than they could 2 or 3 months either side of it. But the really worrying thing is the number one thing I get told is that. It was a fantastic show. We ran out of brochures by the second half. I ran out of business cards in 25 minutes. It was marvelous. Folks, in the absence of any other metric, why not? But actually, if you do the maths, hiring a skip is better, cheaper, and you can get rid of more skips, right? So don't use that as one of your objectives. Now, in terms of objectives, I guess the question is going to be, why do you guys go and what do you hope to achieve by being there? And actually, whenever I ask this question to an audience, typically, I get a set of responses along the following lines. We're there because we want to launch new stuff or new products, new services. We're there because we want to check out the market or we want to check out the competition. We're there because it's all branding and promotion and blah, blah, blah. But also, we're there because we want new clients or existing clients or whatever. And that's fine. Nothing wrong with that because all of these, trust me, are better than giving away brochures. The biggest problem is that these are quite generic. So if you really want to make a difference to this year's event, folks, what I would encourage you to do is to go for what I would call real objectives. Now, I've just put some arbitrary figures here, but to give you an idea, try and aim for X number of leads, or X number of appointments, or X number of sales on the day. And okay, if you go over them, great, change your objectives. But at least you've got some tangible, specific metric that you can come back to and say, that was a good success, next year we need more space, or we need less, or whatever it happens to be. So I'm not going to bang on too much about this, but the idea is think about why you're there, what you're trying to achieve. And in terms of summarizing that, number one thing is, what is your objective? Number two, for heaven's sake, clarify those objectives and make them specific to your company and what you're trying to achieve. And most importantly, I guess, make sure that everybody on the stand with you understands why they're there. Because human nature, let's imagine you decide you're going to go there just looking for new business. Salespeople are quite, oh, new, strangers. Oh, at last, the face I recognize, an existing client. And they'll spend hours with an existing client. But that's not what you're there for. So everybody needs to understand why you're there and what you're trying to achieve. Now, in terms of those people, there's been a lot of research done in terms of visitors and clients and why they come and what they want and what they like and dislike. And the interesting thing with visitor research is whenever it's done, we try to establish why they come to events. Okay. Jim, who works for FaceTime and the EIA, which is the Events Industry Association or Alliance, have done a lot of work to try and establish, by asking you guys, what your customers want. What they've come up with, effectively, is a whole raft of information, but again, irrespective of whether it's trade, irrespective of whether it's consumer, there are a couple of main reasons that people visit events and a couple of main things that wind them up the most. So in terms of visiting an event, I would say the number one reason people go is because they're looking for the latest or what's new. So again, anything that you've got that can work to that, brilliant. The second reason people go is they turn up armed with some sort of problem and they're looking for a solution. Now, sometimes that's at the front of their mind, but more often than not, it's at the back of their mind. And it's only in conversation with you. They go, actually, talking about that, do you guys also do? Oh, do you? And all of a sudden, out comes the true need. So again, it's about engaging with the customers to uncover the true need. In terms of the main wind-up, bear in mind that most of your objectives within the room, certainly from the vote of hands earlier on today, was to sell stuff. The number one wind-up is being sold to, right? Now, again, it's a bit of a nomenclature thing because they're coming to the show because they want to buy. They don't want to feel that you're trying to sell to them. So clearly, you need to create that environment. You know, we do it in a retail environment. You go into a shop, you've got the money in your pocket, you know what you want to buy. The sales assistant comes up to you and stops you buying it. And you end up walking out the shop, crossing the street and buying it somewhere else, and sometimes paying more for it. Because we, as customers, want to feel that we're buying. Pander to that. The second main wind-up is they ask you a question, you go, I don't know. Oh, the person who can answer that question is at lunch. Can you come back later? Oh, they're not here today. Can you tomorrow? They'll be here tomorrow. So again, folks, you know, if you know that somebody's going to ask you a question, make sure you've got that person that can answer those questions on your stand. And if for whatever reason, logistically, they can't be on your stand, then for heaven's sake, make sure they're on the end of a mobile phone so you can give them a quick ring and say, George, I've got somebody here, blah, blah, blah. Because people will go, oh, I'll come back later. They'll end up talking to somebody else. Someone else will provide the answer. They'll end up doing business with that somebody else. Right? So these are the sort of things that we know are very important. Now, what I've tried to do is to say, look, the key to all of this is you clearly don't want to see all of the 40-odd thousand visitors that walk through the doors. So you need to identify the ones that you do want to see and what you can do to try and get those people onto your stand because they are the ones that hold the potential and your results. So what I've tried to do next, folks, is to give you what I would almost call my frequently asked questions. You know, whenever we run these events, people normally ask the same sort of things. Does this work? Should I do that? How should I dress? Where should I stand? How many people? Blah, blah, blah. So I've tried to give you all of that, but clearly if there's something I haven't covered off, by all means raise it. In terms of the mechanics, I would say one of the most common things I get asked is, should we wear a uniform? Now, by uniform, I don't mean, you know, gold braid, peak cap. I mean, should we all look the same? In other words, should we be in suits or should we be casual or whatever? And the answer is, yes, you should. If you're deciding you're going to wear suits, then everybody should be in a suit, not some with and some without. And same if it's black, completely black. Not black, black with a fleck, black with a stripe. It's black. All right? Don't have some in ties and some not, because that will confuse people. Same with a badge. You have a badge and you wear it up here where it belongs, up there, right? Not on your belt. People don't look at your crotch for your name, right? You've got to have that uniform look. And I'll tell you why that's important, because again, I'm sure you've done this in a retail environment. You go into the shop, you hunt high and low, you can't find what you want. In desperation, you turn to the sales assistant and go, excuse me, do you stock such and such? Because, oh, I'm sorry, I don't work here. So, oh, I'm sorry if I think you're the sort of person that does. Because, oh, I'm sorry if I give you the impression I'm the sort of person who does. And you don't know who's the more embarrassed. So the point is this, if I walk onto your stand and you're talking to one of your colleagues, but your colleague is dressed dissimilarly to you, I, as the visitor, am not going to know whether you are actually two colleagues having a conversation or you're actually conversing with a visitor. So if I interrupt you and it is a visitor, I'm going to feel really stupid. Rather than put myself in that position, I'll come back later. And actually, I either don't come back later or someone else has hijacked me. So it's really important that I can identify as a visitor that you both work on that stand, or all three of you, or all four of you. And likewise, dress appropriately. You know, if your customers expect you to be in chinos and T-shirts, branded or whatever, then that's how you should wear. All right? That's the important thing, is about looking the way your customers expect you to look. That's an important aspect. We also know, folks, exhibition stands have a habit of being progressively trashed as the day goes on, and unfortunately you've got no control over what time your key prospect walks past your stand. If they come past at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it looks like you've been partying hard, it's probably not a good look. So again, if you've got the resources, appoint one person in your company whose job should be to be a stand manager. They should have no customer interaction whatsoever. Their entire job is to make sure that all of these things happen, or as many of these things as possible, and to make sure that your staff behave themselves on their stand. Tidy up, get rid of the newspapers, coffee cups, and all that stuff. Likewise, in the same breath, it should be functional. Even if you have a professionally designed stand, if the visitor bumps their head on the hanging basket every time they walk onto your stand, it's not a good look. Move it. Don't be scared to move it if it's not working for you. Next big area I get asked about is, what about gimmicks? Do they work? And by gimmicks, the most common gimmick, I guess, is a cardboard box with a slot in the top, and it says, put in your card and get champagne or salmon or whatever it happens to be. And the question I get asked is, Simon, do these things work? The answer is absolutely brilliantly at getting names and addresses of people who like to drink champagne or eat salmon. Not necessarily at people who are going to be your prospects. So again, if you are thinking of having something like that, don't have an iPad, because everybody wants an iPad. You'll get everyone's business cards. Have, if you can, something that will only appeal to the people that you are trying to target. You know, for example, we did some work with a boat show, and one guy there had a thing. It said, enter your business card and we'll give you a free boat cleaning service. Okay, he didn't get millions of business cards, but every single business card in there was from somebody who owned a boat. And weirdos, obviously. So that's the key thing to remember, right? Think about how you can do this. Also, folks, if you've got a product that people can touch and see and taste, as Jim was saying earlier, allow them to do that, because that's a brilliant way of doing it. If you're a service provider, it's very hard to have something on your stand. A gimmick is probably quite a good way of doing it. Next, brochures. Come to the revolution, I will ban brochures, but if you have to have them, then think about how you're going to vend them. We looked at 4 different ways. We looked at a fan display, we looked at a pile of brochures, we had a pile just chucked on the table, and we had the freestanding literature racks, you know, the Perspex ones, and the wall-mounted racks as well. And the idea was which of those worked best, so we literally got some stopwatches and we measured the efficacy of each of them. The least effective, not surprisingly, was the neatly fanned display. Yep. Don't neatly fan it, that's anal. Right? No matter how pretty you think it looks, it doesn't look pretty. And more to the point, you can see visitors stressing out about where they're going to take one so they don't ruin your display. And worse than that, I've actually seen an exhibitor then tut when someone had the audacity to ruin their display, and half as they rearranged it. It's like a ripple in the pond. It's like, fuck, I'll check that out. Right? Don't do it. That's anal. The second least effective or more effective way of doing it was a pile of brochures, because again, visitors weren't sure if that was your personal stock or whether they could help themselves. So they would furtively look over both shoulders, grab one and leg it down the aisles. Not great for interaction. Next most effective was the literature racks, and they were great as long as you were down to your last 1 or 2. The moment you got down to your last 1 or 2, people stopped taking. Nobody seems to want to empty any display. Right? So as long as they're well topped up, they work well. And strangely, the most effective was just I'm not saying thrown everywhere, but just put on the table. It was clearly it was there for their look. They could pick it up, start flicking through it, and you could then interact with them and go, oh, that's interesting. What brings you to the show, blah, blah, blah. So that's the missive on brochures. With all of these things, folks, as you'd expect, there are lots of do's and don'ts, and I've tried to give you the most common do's and don'ts. Do have shifts and breaks. One of the most important things about shifts and breaks is if you don't, then people will take lunch, usually at lunchtime. And that's when some visitors will walk past, and that's when you've got an empty stand. Bad news. The other thing about shifts and breaks, if you don't plan them out, we all live, sadly, in a fascist no-smoking society. And so if you want to try and get a cigarette, especially you've seen how big XL is, you've got to walk for fucking miles to go and have a cigarette. So by the time you get there, you think, now I'm here, I might as well have a second one. And you end up networking outside, leaving all the non-smokers on the stand to work their butt off. My heart bleeds not. Right. Next, be natural. 2 things by being natural. Number 1, don't go and buy a brand new pair of shoes. It will kill your feet. But number 2, make sure the people on your stand are doing something that feels natural. In other words, don't get one of your techie guys who never normally wears a suit and put them into a suit. Because no matter how many Hugo Boss Armani labels you'll give them, they will still look like somebody who doesn't normally wear a suit wearing a suit. Right? The other thing is, again, don't have shy, retiring wallflowers on your stand, because they will stand there and all their body language goes, go away, I'm scared, and they will. Right? And possibly your most gregarious salespeople might not be the right people to have either, because people feel like they're being sold to, and again, we know they don't want to do that. So think about your resources. Who have you got? What's the best way of doing it? Good tip is look busy. 2 types of busy, good busy, bad busy. Good busy is where it looks like it's okay to interrupt you at any time. So things like clearing up the coffee cups, the newspapers, restocking the brochures, all that's good busy. Bad busy is things that imply you are engaged and or might be slightly pissed off if you're interrupted. So using phones, laptops, reading, whatever, right? Eating. a very good tip is whenever I exhibit, folks, on the first day, normally I invite my friends onto the stand. And by friends, I mean tame clients. So that the doors open 10 o'clock, let's say, and my stand is rocking with people. I bribe them with sandwiches and donuts, whatever it happens to be. But my stand is rocking. So number one, all my competitors are sitting there going, oh, fucking hell, he's really busy now, really quiet, oh, God. Number two, a busy stand attracts people. They go, oh, this is really busy, what's going on here? And more people join your stand. So it's a good thing to use. Also, think up questions. Folks, I used to be embarrassed with this because I think, oh, it's really obvious, think of questions. Yeah. But if you don't think of questions, chances are you will ask the most stupid question, which is, can I help you? And this is normally a reply, and one of them is more polite than the other. So think about questions. The sort of questions I'm talking about are things like, how familiar are you with our products and services? Because the idea is by one question, you'll get lots of information. It might tell you where about in the buying cycle they are. It might tell you, for example, which other competitors they're considering. And product knowledge will tell you how much that suddenly you've got their budget, and so on and so forth. But these are not what I'd call first-line questions. You can't stand on your booth and go, oh, hello, how familiar? Oh, I didn't think so. So you need an icebreaker. Oh, how's it going? You know, blah, 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 blah. Oh, by the way, what? And then you can get into one of these. So again, think of those questions because they will actually help you on the day. As with any list of do's, there's also a list of don'ts. And these are the most important ones. Number one, don't hover, glide, or pounce. Right? People do what I call the crab walk, which is they put their arms behind their back and then they start walking like that, sideways, right? And they start squinting as they're trying to read your badge as you walk past. You go, who the fuck are you, right? You don't do that in real life. Don't do that on your stand. Right? The other perennial favourite is hunting. Do you know what I mean by hunting? Hunting is where you make eye contact with someone at the back of the room and you track them down every single aisle like this. And as they approach you, they go right, right, and right again and re-emerge behind you. You think, what the fuck's going on there? And actually, what your people need to understand, folks, is eye contact with a smile is a good thing. But the moment you lose the smile because you get tired, it becomes quite scary. Right? So, good. No eating, drinking, or smoking, not that you can in these fascist days, but with eating and drinking, certainly the thing I would say is two reasons for not doing it. Number one is it's an example of bad busy. It's saying, I'm on my break, I'm having my lunch, please leave me alone, and they will. But number two is they create mess and spillage. If you do insist upon eating and drinking, then my advice is Cornish pasties on a competitive stand, because they fragment everyone, make a fucking mess. Don't sit down, folks. Even if you've got chairs built into your stand or stools, don't use it. If your client sits down, by all means, sit down with them, but don't use them because, A, you'll feel more tired being up and down than if you're just standing all day. And secondly, if you're sitting down, it's bad busy. It's like, oh, my legs are tired, I'm on my break, I'd rather be doing this than talking to you. And again, you're fending people off your stand, which you really shouldn't be doing. The next one about newspapers, mobile phones, laptops, blah, blah, blah. They're not exclusive, but don't do anything that implies bad busy. What people used to do years ago is the status symbol of a mobile phone is like, oh, I'm using my mobile phone, my arm's about to break because it's so heavy. Now they're so small, people like to do a snit and they realise that's a bit naughty. So what they do is they pretend a bit more furtively, and it looks like they're urinating on the back wall of the stand like that. Don't do it. You don't need to do that. Same with meetings, folks. Don't talk to your colleagues. It's very easy to do. You're quiet. You go, yeah, hello, George. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And all of a sudden, you're engaged in a conversation. Your back's turned and people are walking past you. That's a very expensive meeting room that you guys have just bought. And certainly don't go on that. I'm sure this doesn't apply to anybody in the room. This is just the voice of experience. Manning a stand with a hangover is the devil's own work. Right? It's probably the way of solving the prison overcrowding population, actually, is you force them to exhibit with a hangover. Nightmarish. Remember, folks, that whatever happens during the days of the show is only going to be a small percentage of the business that you're going to bring in. You know, we get people and they'll come up to us and go, hello, Simon, do you remember us? I go, sorry, no, I don't. They go, yeah, we came on your stand this year. So that's funny, I wasn't there this year. So, oh, well, it must have been last year. So the point is, 18 months later, I'm still picking up business. Now, the interesting thing about the business that you pick up is you've got to follow up. And in terms of follow-up, folks, I used to be terribly guilty, I suppose, or felt guilty about saying, please follow up your leads, because to me, it was just so obvious. It was a no-brainer. It was a bit Janet and John. And then the EIA did some research, and they asked you guys, exhibitors, a whole series of questions. But one of the questions they asked them was, do you follow up your leads effectively? And a certain number of you guys admitted to not following up your leads correctly. If I told you that figure was as high as 20%, it'd be quite worrying. If I told you it was as much as 30%, you'd think, oh my God. But what if I told you it was about 40% of people who admitted to not following up their leads? That'd be pretty bad news. 50% would be tragic, because that's half of all the exhibitors don't bother following up their leads. 60% would be practically unbelievable. So you can imagine my surprise when the research came back and it proved that the number of exhibitors who admitted to not following up their leads correctly was that. What the bloody hell is the point of going? And we work with the contractors that build up and break down your stands, and they will say that on average, at least one time per show, as they're dismantling somebody's stand, they go, oh, what's that? And they pick it up and it rattles, and they open the lid and there's business cards in there. No one told me to take it. I thought you would take it. I thought marketing had them. I didn't know I had to take them back. And they leave the whole point of going on the floor. And the bigger companies are as guilty as well, because once they get them back, they then send them to data entry, and they get added to the database. And then they go from data entry to marketing, and marketing then do very good justification. And then eventually goes around to the salespeople. By then, it's too late. You must follow up, folks, whether you do it through a system of light pens or whatever else, have a way of following up. Because you can't just rely on people giving you their business cards. They might run out of business cards. They might not want to give you a business card. Right? So whether you do it with a piece of paper and a stapler, that's fine. Or whether you're a bit more high-tech and use a tablet. Do I need a tablet? Entirely up to you. The whole point is get what you need, but less is more. Don't approach someone with a clipboard and go, oh, just get a few details, because they go, oh. Shrink it down to a sheet of A5, pre-print it, so all you can do is go tick, 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 great. And actually, with some of the technology nowadays, there's nothing to stop you guys sending off an email that night to the customer, because they're going to be back in the office the next day, and you're still going to be on the stand, but they go back in the office, and there's an email from you saying, dear blogs, thanks very much, really good to see you on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, as appropriate. As promised, we will contact you on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Click PDF attached, here's our brochure, have a good day. How impressive is that? Whereas your competitors will be waiting there, they've got all these goodies. If they remember to take them back to the office, by the time it gets through to the salespeople, you've been in first. It's worth doing, especially at the moment, folks. We've just come out of the worst recession ever. Also, a good tip is put a rating on there, hot, warm, or cold, because the person who takes the lead isn't always the same person that follows up on the lead, and therefore it's probably quite good practice so that the salespeople know which ones need to be called first, second, third, and so on. Okay, we're approaching the end of my time, so I need to summarize. What I would say, folks, number one is do agree your objectives. Why are you there? What's the purpose of being there? What are you trying to achieve? Do utilize all the upfront stuff that's available. All right? Most of the stuff doesn't cost you money to do. It's worth then doing. Less than 5% of exhibitors, I think, is a figure, will actually use PR services. It's not going to cost you anything. Do it. Right? Also, don't just rely upon the organisers who do a great job at attracting people. Don't just rely on them to attract the people for you. If you know people that you want to invite them. Now, perhaps you go, oh, no, I don't want to invite them because they'll see my main competitors. If that client is as important as you think they are, they're probably going to come to the show anyway. It's far better they turn up with an invite from you than from one of your competitors. So do your bit to try and get the people that you want to see on your stand. Identify from the database who are the people that you do want to speak to and the ones that you don't want to speak to, and then think, right, what do we know about them? What's it going to take to get those people to visit our stand? Once we've got them on our stand, we need some way of getting those details, and then hopefully, once we've got those details, do something with them. And therefore, follow up in whatever way. They reckon something like 4 to 6 is the average number of contacts you need from a new piece of business until it becomes a client. So the first one could be a letter or an email, the second one could be a follow-up call, the third one could be the appointment, the fourth one could be a proposal, whatever. Don't be scared to recontact them. Remember, these people want to be there, they want to buy from you, allow them to. Don't be scared to contact them, folks. This is a really important time in our sort of economic history. One final thing I'll leave you with, if I might, and that's something that's not often in the books. It's the one thing that I think makes one of the biggest amounts of difference to the success of your show, and that is when you do have a stand, do look like you're having fun. Look like you want to be there, and it's not your turn this year, and you're not there because the competitors are there, and it's not an arse that's disrupted your, had to go out of office or whatever. If you look like you're having fun, people are going to come and talk to you. If you look like you're there under duress, they will avoid you. It's simple as that. You can give out really strong signals. So this is probably one of the most important things that I can certainly mention to you if you're going to be there. Think about your team, who's going to be on the stand with you, and make sure that people you select are the ones that look like they're going to have good fun. Okay, good time for questions. Any questions at this stage? Okay, you're either stunned in silence again. Sorry, what did you say? Madam, hi. Yes, if you find somebody with a UBM badge, they can send you that presentation. You're welcome. Okay, folks, in that case, I wish you the very best of luck. What I normally do on these sort of presentations is I show a little bit of a slideshow of photographs I've taken of people behaving badly on their stand. And I'm not a David Bailey, they're not artistically beautiful photographs, but the reason I take it is it just shows you how people just disregard the rules, and you just think, surely people don't do that in real life. The reason I'm mentioning it is, I didn't today because we're lacking in time, but I will be at the show with my mobile phone, And unless you want to appear in a presentation like this in about a year's time, then I suggest the more of these things you do, the better and most successful you will be. I wish you the very best of luck, and thank you very much for your attention. Cheers.